Would you believe me if I told you a mother raised her daughter on chocolate and candy 3 times a day, every single day of her life? Would you believe that the same woman, years later, mixed a dog's tranquilizer into her daughter's drinking water, just enough to make her legs stop working? This isn't a nightmare. It's a story that happened behind lace curtains and bedtime prayers. Her name was Grace Miller, and the daughter she swore she'd protect from the world was the one she destroyed piece by piece. The house on Willow Creek looked perfect from the outside. White porch, hanging flower pots, a soft swing that squeaked every evening as Grace read the newspaper aloud. Inside, the scent of chocolate never left. Every surface seemed to hold something sweet. Bowls of caramel, trays of cookies, stacks of neatly wrapped bars. Sweetness keeps the sadness away, Grace would say. And Lena, her daughter, believed it. From as early as she could remember, every morning began the same way. A glass of milk, a candy bar, and her mother's voice humming an old lullaby. But what Lena never noticed, what no one noticed, was that every glass of milk had the faintest shimmer of something else. By the time she turned 12, her legs started to ache. At 14, she stumbled more often. By 16, she couldn't walk without help. Doctors called it neurological degeneration. Grace called it God's mysterious way of keeping them together. Grace was proud of how calm her daughter had become, obedient, grateful, dependent. She decorated the wheelchair with pink ribbons and called it my princess throne. Lena never complained. Her world was the house, its garden, its stairs, and the locked basement door Grace said led to bad memories. Every week, Grace filmed home videos. She always set a bowl of candy beside her daughter before whispering, "You're my sweetest girl." Then came a piece of chocolate and a forced smile for the tape. Years passed. Grace aged, but her control never weakened. No friends, no school. "The world isn't kind to people like us," she'd say, closing the curtains tighter. When Lena turned 19, things began to crack. One night, while Grace slept on the couch, Lena rolled to the kitchen. The air smelled metallic. On the counter sat a green bottle labeled Canine Tranquilizer, for use on large dogs only. Half empty. When Grace woke, Lena said nothing, but something inside her broke loose. She began refusing chocolate. "I'm not hungry," she'd whisper. Grace's smile would fade, then return, trembling. "You need your sugar, sweetheart." Her eyes never blinked. Days later, Lena found the basement key. She descended the creaking stairs, heart pounding. The air reeked of dust and chemicals. At the far end, an old TV flickered. A tape was already playing. Lena, age 3. On screen, a little girl drank milk and coughed. Grace's voice soothed her. "That's it, Mommy's here. The medicine keeps you safe." Lena froze. Her body shook as she realized every pain, every lost step had been given to her. That night, she sat in silence, staring at her golden wheelchair, her cage. She whispered, "Tomorrow, I'll leave." But footsteps came, slow, careful. The door opened. Grace stood there, smiling, holding a glass of milk. "Couldn't sleep, sweetheart?" she asked. Tiny white crystals floated at the top, catching the moonlight. Lena didn't sleep that night. The glass of milk stayed untouched until morning. Grace knocked softly. "Drink before it gets warm." "I don't feel well," Lena said. "You'll feel worse if you skip your medicine." That word, medicine, echoed like a curse. When Grace left, Lena poured the milk down the sink. "I need to get out." Days dragged by. Grace's eyes never left her. "Your appetite's strange lately," she'd say. Lena smiled weakly, hiding her shaking hands. That night, Lena went to the basement again. She gathered all the tapes for proof. In an old box, she found dozens of empty bottles labeled Canine Tranquilizer, stretching back 10 years. Every illness she'd ever had now made sense. When she came upstairs, Grace was waiting. "I heard the chair moving," she said. "There are things a daughter shouldn't see." Lena whispered. What kind of things? Grace smiled. Things that make mothers do what's necessary. Later, Lena tried the window, her only way out. As she tied a blanket to the sill, the floor creaked. Why are you awake, sweetheart? Grace's calm voice came through the door. Grace entered, flashlight in hand. You don't need air from out there. Everything you need is here, with me. She handed Lena the glass of milk. Will it make me better? It'll keep you mine. The next morning, every window was locked. Only the front door remained. Then, 2 knocks. The postman. Her chance. I'll take it, Lena called. Please, help me. Before he could react, Grace appeared behind her, smiling. My daughter loves to play detective. The door shut. Locks clicked. Silence. That evening, Grace said softly, People outside don't understand. You wouldn't survive without me. I made sure of that. That night, Lena went for the phone. She dialed 91.A, hand landed on her shoulder. Who were you calling, sweetheart? Grace whispered. The world will hurt you. She kissed Lena's head and walked away. Lena waited, then dialed again. Sheriff's office. What's your emergency? My mother's trying to kill me. The line cracked, then went dead. The lights went out. Darkness filled the house, and from the shadows came Grace's voice. Sweetheart, why are you still awake? The darkness inside the house was complete. The hum of the refrigerator had stopped. Even the wall clock was silent. Lena's breath echoed in the still air. She could hear the faint creak of the wooden floor as Grace moved somewhere nearby. Sweetheart, her mother's voice drifted through the dark. You shouldn't frighten me like that. Phones are dangerous things. They let strangers in. Lena didn't answer. Her trembling hands searched for something, anything, to defend herself with. Her fingers brushed the metal frame of the wheelchair. It would have to do. Footsteps approached, slow, deliberate. Do you know what happens when a mother loses her child? Grace whispered. Everything goes dark, just like this. Lena backed toward her room, trying to keep her breathing quiet. The wheels squeaked softly, betraying her. The footsteps quickened. Stop hiding from me. Grace's voice cracked, trembling with rage and despair. You think they'll believe you? You think they'll take you from me? Lena reached her doorway and slammed it shut. She locked it and pressed her back against the door. Her heart hammered in her chest. The handle rattled once, then silence. Minutes crawled by. She couldn't tell if Grace was still outside. The house smelled faintly of burned sugar from the oven. Something had been left inside, forgotten when the power went out. Lena's mind raced. If the phone was dead, she needed another way. The basement window, small, dusty, but maybe openable. She wheeled toward the door, listening carefully. Nothing. She opened it slowly and rolled out into the hall. The candlelight flickered faintly from the kitchen. Grace must have lit it. The flame danced in the distance like a watchful eye. Lena turned toward the basement stairs. Each bump of the wheels on the wood echoed like thunder. Halfway there, she heard a sound, a whisper. It came from the kitchen. Do you remember your first word? Grace murmured. It wasn't Mama, it was more. You always wanted more, Lena. More sugar, more chocolate, more sweetness. I gave you everything you asked for. The words slid through the air like a lullaby turned poisonous. Lena kept moving. She reached the basement door, pulled it open, and began descending backward, one small step at a time. The candlelight grew dimmer behind her. In the basement, the smell of mold and old chemicals filled the air. She could barely see, but she remembered where everything was. The tapes, the bottles, the locked cabinet. If she could just find the bottles, she could show the police. She could prove it. Her hands fumbled in the dark until she found a box. Inside, yes, rows of green bottles, neatly labeled. The proof she needed. She pulled one out and clutched it against her chest. Then she heard the basement door creak open. "Lena." Grace's voice was gentle now, almost sad. "I didn't want it to end like this. But you're forcing me." A match struck above her, and the faint glow of a candle appeared on the stairway. Grace began descending, one careful step at a time. Lena wheeled herself backward, deeper into the shadows. Grace's eyes gleamed in the candlelight. "You think I'm a monster. But everything I did for love. The world out there doesn't care about broken things, Lena. It throws them away." She reached the bottom step. "Do you know how many mothers beg to keep their children forever?" "I was lucky. I found a way." Lena's voice broke. "You poisoned me." Grace smiled faintly. "No, I preserved you." The candle flickered as she moved closer. The flame illuminated the tears on her face. "I gave you a reason to need me," she whispered. "Isn't that what love is?" Lena's eyes darted toward the old generator in the corner. Grace had used it once when storms cut the power. If she could reach it. She wheeled silently across the cold concrete, every movement a prayer. Grace followed, holding the candle higher. "Come back to your room," she said softly. "We'll forget all this. We'll start over. I'll make you your favorite chocolate pudding." Lena reached the generator. Her fingers found the switch and pulled it down. The basement roared to life. The sudden light blinded them both. Grace screamed, dropping the candle. It hit the floor and rolled, setting a trail of old papers aflame. Lena turned toward her mother, the truth exposed in the harsh light. Grace's face looked older, cracked with exhaustion and fury. "You can't live without me," Grace hissed. "You'll die out there." Lena lifted the bottle in her hand. "Maybe I'd rather die free." Grace lunged. The wheelchair tipped. The bottle shattered. Liquid splashed across the concrete, mixing with fire. The smell of chemicals filled the air. Lena crawled, dragging herself toward the stairs. Grace coughed in the smoke behind her. "Lena!" she screamed. "You'll come back." "You always come back." Lena pulled herself up the stairs, one arm at a time. Her body ached, her lungs burned, but she didn't stop. She reached the top, slammed the basement door, and twisted the lock. The pounding started almost immediately. "Don't leave me here!" Grace shouted from below. "You can't survive without me." Lena pressed her forehead to the door, whispering through tears, "Watch me." The fire spread quickly. Smoke curled up through the cracks in the floor. Lena rolled toward the front door and tried the handle. Locked. The keys. Grace's apron. She wheeled toward the kitchen. The air shimmered with heat. She could barely breathe. The apron hung by the oven. She grabbed it and found the keys. She turned the lock. The cold night air rushed in. Behind her, the basement door rattled violently. "Lena!" Then came a sharp crack, the sound of wood splintering. Grace burst through, her hair wild, face blackened with soot. "You can't leave me." Lena turned her wheelchair toward the door. "I already did." She pushed forward. The threshold caught her wheels. Grace lunged again, her hand grabbing Lena's wrist. For a moment they froze, mother and daughter, bound by everything broken between them. Grace's voice softened to a whisper. "Please, don't go." Lena looked into her eyes, once warm, now hollow. "You should have let me live." She wrenched free and rolled into the night. Behind her, the house groaned as flames consumed it. Grace's scream faded into the crackle of fire. Lena reached the street. Her body trembled with exhaustion, her vision blurring. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone must have seen the smoke. She watched the house burn, the orange glow reflecting in her eyes. For the first time, she felt the weight lift from her chest. She whispered, "I'm free." Then everything went black. When Lena opened her eyes, everything was white. The steady beeping of machines surrounded her. Tubes ran across her hands, and the sharp smell of antiseptic filled the air. For a moment she couldn't remember where she was. Then it hit her. The fire, the screaming, her mother's voice echoing through the smoke. She tried to sit up, but pain stabbed her chest. A nurse rushed in, gently pressing her back against the pillow. "Easy, sweetheart," the woman said softly. "You're safe now." Safe. The word felt strange, foreign. Lena looked toward the window, a pale morning sky, streaked with ash-gray clouds. A police car was parked outside. The nurse noticed her gaze. "Detective Collins will want to speak with you when you're ready." Lena nodded weakly. "My mother?" The nurse hesitated. "They're still searching." The fire spread fast. "No one's been found yet." Lena turned her face away. Tears slipped silently down her cheeks. Later that day, Detective Collins entered her room. He was in his 50s, tired eyes, but kind. He pulled up a chair and sat beside her bed. "Lena," he said, "we went through the house this morning. Half of it's gone. But the basement, that's where we found something." He placed a small charred box on the table. Inside it, wrapped in melted plastic, was an old VHS tape. "We managed to recover this," he continued. "Looks like your mother recorded something." Lena's heartbeat quickened. "The tapes, she used to hide them." Collins nodded. "We'll have our team restore it, but I thought you should see it first." A nurse wheeled in an old player and connected it to a small screen. When the tape began, static filled the room. Then an image flickered into focus. Her mother, Grace, sitting at the kitchen table. She looked younger, calmer, almost ordinary. On the table before her were rows of brown bottles, the same kind Lena had found in the basement. Grace smiled into the camera. "If you're watching this," she said softly, "then you've probably judged me already. But you need to understand, love makes us do terrible things." Lena's hands gripped the blanket. Grace continued, "When Lena was born, they said she wouldn't survive her first year. Heart problems, weak nerves, brittle bones. They told me she'd never walk. I couldn't accept that. I couldn't let her go." Her eyes flicked to the bottles. "So I did what I had to. I studied, experimented, mixed what I could. It worked. She lived. She thrived. But the price—" She looked down, her voice trembling. "The dose had to continue. Every day, if I stopped, her body would collapse. I tried, once. She fainted. I couldn't risk losing her again." The detective glanced at Lena, his face unreadable. Grace's tone darkened. "And then she started to talk about leaving. About college, about independence. I knew she'd forget me. Everyone forgets their mothers eventually. I couldn't let that happen." Her voice cracked. "I made sure she'd stay close. If she couldn't walk, she'd never leave. I told myself it was love. Maybe it was, or maybe it was fear wearing love's mask." The image wavered, the tape distorting. "Lena," Grace whispered, looking straight into the lens, "you won't understand this now. But someday you'll forgive me, because one day you'll lose someone too, and you'll feel what I felt. The terror of being left behind." The screen went black. Lena stared at it for a long time, motionless. Detective Collins finally spoke. "We found the ingredients she mentioned. It's not poison. It's a sedative mix, meant for animals, but in small doses it could weaken nerves. Over time, it would cause paralysis," Lena whispered. "So she wasn't trying to kill me. She was trying to keep me." Collins nodded slowly. "In her mind, yes. But it's still a crime. We'll need a full statement from you when you're ready." She turned away, her eyes fixed on the wall. "She's gone, isn't she?" "We haven't found a body yet," he said gently. "It's possible she escaped before the house went up." Lena's pulse raced. "If she's alive—" "She'll surface," he assured her. "People like her always do." 3 days later, Lena was transferred to a rehabilitation center. The doctors said her body needed time and therapy, to heal. But her mind didn't rest. Each night she replayed the tape in her head, hearing her mother's voice whisper through the static. "I did it for love." One evening, while the nurse checked her vitals, a letter arrived for her. No return address. Lena hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a single object, a small golden ring, her mother's wedding band. A note was folded beneath it, in delicate handwriting. "Love doesn't end, Lena. It just finds new ways to stay." The nurse noticed her pale expression. "Are you all right?" Lena forced a smile. "Just an old memory." But her hands were shaking. That night, unable to sleep, she wheeled to the window. Rain shimmered under the streetlights. The world outside looked clean, untouched by the past. She held the ring up to the glass. The gold caught the light. A perfect circle, unbroken. And for a moment she thought she saw movement across the street. A figure, standing in the shadows near the trees, watching. Her breath caught. She blinked. The figure was gone. But on the windowsill, faint and recent, lay a smear of ash. The next morning Detective Collins returned. He looked uneasy. "Lena, we need to talk. There's something strange about the fire. The basement door was locked from the outside. Whoever did that didn't want her to escape." Lena frowned. "You think someone else was there?" He hesitated. "We're not ruling it out. There's also this." He handed her a photograph, taken after the fire. The wall near the stairs had a message scrawled in black soot. She wasn't alone. Lena stared at the photo, the ring still clenched in her hand. Her voice was barely a whisper. Then who was? For years the truth slept in the shadows of that quiet house. But once the light touched it, everything began to unravel. Elena sat in her wheelchair by the window, watching the trees sway under the evening wind. The world outside seemed alive, breathing, yet her own body, still, heavy, foreign, felt like a cage she hadn't built. The cassette she had watched in the basement still played in her head. Every frame, every sound. Her mother's soft humming, the gentle clink of the spoon in the cup, and that small bottle labeled canine sedative. She wanted to scream, but what could she say? "Mother, why did you poison me?" The words burned in her throat like a fever. That evening, Margaret entered the room, holding a tray, a cup of cocoa and a small chocolate bar. "Dinner, sweetheart," she said softly, as if the world hadn't fallen apart. Elena looked at the tray. "Mom, can we talk?" Her voice trembled. Margaret froze for a moment, then smiled. "Of course, darling." "What's wrong?" Elena hesitated. The air between them thickened with silence. Finally she said, "I found the tapes." The smile on Margaret's face broke, just slightly. "Tapes?" "The ones in the basement." "You recorded everything." Margaret set the tray down. "Elena, whatever you saw, you misunderstood." "No," Elena whispered, her hands shaking. "You mixed something in my water." "Every day. You said it was vitamins, but it was poison, wasn't it?" Margaret's lips trembled. She sat beside her daughter, her eyes glassy. "Do you know what happens when children grow up?" she said softly. "They leave. They forget the hands that fed them, the arms that kept them safe. I couldn't let that happen." Elena stared at her, disbelief cutting through her like ice. "You crippled me so I'd stay?" Margaret reached for her hand, tears spilling freely now. "You're all I have, Elena." "You don't understand what loneliness does to a heart." Elena pulled her hand away. "You turned me into your prisoner." Margaret's voice cracked. "I gave you everything. I loved you enough to never lose you." There was no sound for a long moment, only the clock ticking on the wall, slow and cruel. Elena looked at the cup again. The cocoa still steamed gently. She reached out, took it, and stared into the dark liquid. Then, with quiet finality, she poured it onto the floor. The brown stain spread across the carpet like a wound. Margaret's eyes widened. "Elena, don't—" "It's over," Elena said, her tone hollow. "No more chocolate." "No more lies." Margaret's face twisted in panic. "You think you can leave me? You can't even walk." Elena turned her gaze toward her mother, cold, sharp, steady. "I can still crawl," she whispered. The air in the room shifted. Margaret's expression faltered, as if she suddenly realized her daughter was no longer the helpless child she had controlled. That night, as the wind howled outside, Elena unlocked her bedroom door for the first time in years. The metal groaned, unused to freedom. She wheeled herself to the basement one last time. The tapes still lay scattered, silent witnesses to her mother's crimes. She picked one up, the oldest one, labeled simply Day 1. Her mother's voice filled the dusty air. "Today, my little girl smiled at me." I'll never let that smile fade. Never. Elena pressed the stop button. Tears blurred her sight, but her voice came out clear. "You did." From upstairs, Margaret's faint voice echoed down the stairwell. "Elena? What are you doing?" Elena didn't answer. She turned off the light. The basement sank into darkness, but for the first time it wasn't frightening. It was peaceful. She knew what she had to do next. Tomorrow, the world would know everything. Tomorrow, Margaret's perfect love would finally die in the light. The morning light crept through the curtains, pale and cold. It fell across the house like truth itself, quiet, unstoppable, merciless. Margaret was in the kitchen, humming as she boiled water. The same tune she had hummed every morning of Elena's life, the same ritual that had hidden her guilt for years. But this morning, something was missing. No sound from the wheelchair upstairs. No call for breakfast. No soft reply. Just silence. "Sweetheart," she called out. "It's morning." No answer. She carried the cup to Elena's room, her hands trembling slightly. Not from age, but from fear she didn't want to name. The bed was empty. The sheets were folded perfectly. The window stood open, curtains fluttering like pale ghosts. For a moment, her breath stopped. "No, no, no." She rushed to the window and looked down. The wheelchair was gone. Only faint tracks in the damp grass below, winding toward the forest. Margaret's heart pounded. "Elena!" She ran barefoot across the yard, the cold earth cutting her feet. "Elena!" But the forest didn't answer. It swallowed her cries. Hours later, police cars surrounded the property. Neighbors whispered. Journalists crowded the fence, cameras flashing as officers carried out boxes of tapes, medicine bottles, and years of secrets. Inside the house, Margaret sat on the couch, her face blank. "She doesn't understand," she murmured. "I did everything for her." But her voice was shaking and her hands wouldn't stop trembling. Detective Harris laid a cassette on the table, the one Elena had left behind. "We found this on the porch," he said. He pressed play. Margaret's own voice filled the room. "She'll never leave me. I'll make sure of it. Even if she hates me, she'll still be mine." Her breath caught. That was taken out of context." The detective didn't reply. He turned off the tape and stood. "Mrs. Collins, you're under arrest." Margaret didn't resist. As the handcuffs clicked around her wrists, she whispered, "I just wanted her to stay." Outside, a light drizzle began to fall. The same gentle rain from the day of her husband's funeral. The same rain she once poured over his grave, pretending it was holy water. Now it washed over her as she was led into the police car, her pale dress clinging to her skin like guilt. Far from the house, by the edge of the forest, Elena watched from her chair, hidden among the trees. Her hair was tangled, her eyes hollow but alive. In her lap lay a small cassette recorder, the same one she used to uncover everything. She pressed record. "This is Elena Collins," she whispered. For years, I believed love meant protection. I learned too late that sometimes love is just another word for control. But today, I'm free. She stopped the tape and let the silence fill the space around her. The forest was calm. For the first time, she could breathe. She didn't know where the road would lead. Hospitals, recovery, maybe a life that wasn't built from fear. But it didn't matter. The world was open now, vast and waiting. She turned her wheelchair toward the road. As the rain thickened, her silhouette grew smaller against the gray horizon. A fragile figure rolling forward through the mist, leaving behind the house of candy, lies, and poison. And inside that house, on the kitchen table, the cup of cocoa still sat untouched. Steam long gone, sweetness turned bitter. Elena testified at the trial. She didn't cry. She only said one thing before leaving the courtroom. "You called it love. I call it survival months past." She began therapy, learned to move again, not on her feet, but on her own terms. She started writing, speaking for those who'd suffered behind closed doors. And if you think this story ends here, it doesn't. Because Elena's journey isn't over. The next chapter of her life is what she's writing right now. Subscribe, because sometimes truth hides in the people we trust the most, and sometimes survival starts with the courage to see it.